everybody. Welcome. You are all here for a real treat. Ambassador Prosper is here. He is a decorated Pepperdine Law alumnus, recognized as a leader in global justice. He is the son of physicians who immigrated from Haiti, and he graduated from Pepperdine in 1989. Ambassador Prosper began his career in the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, where he worked in the hardcore gang division. He went on to become an assistant United States attorney, where he investigated and prosecuted major international drug cartels. He then served as the United Nations lead trial attorney for the International Criminal Tribunal of Rwanda. In this role, he broke new ground in international law by convincing the tribunal for the first time to recognize rape as an act of genocide and crime against humanity. After his tenure with the UN, he was appointed U.S. Ambassador at Large for war crimes. Ambassador Prosper is currently an attorney at Arden Fox, just down here in Los Angeles, where he focuses on international government relations and corporate social responsibility. It is with great pleasure that I introduce to you a true hero of global justice, Ambassador Prosper.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. This is a great turnout.
Yeah.
Very good turnout. Must be good pizza. Yeah. So I'll try to hopefully make this interesting. Let me say thank you. It is a honor for me to be here and to be part of this lecture series, to be part of the Global Justice Program, to share my thoughts, experiences on issues that we know are of critical importance. You know, we had lunch earlier and we were discussing some of the work that many of you students are engaged in, and it's rewarding and it's something that I found very satisfying to see that my institution is really out there working hard to make a difference. When I was here years ago, we weren't, unfortunately, focused on these issues, but it wasn't because of Pepperdine. It was because the world wasn't really focused on these type of issues. So the benefit of what you're doing, it gives us a forum, it gives us a place where we can analyze some of these problems. We can discuss them and begin to debate and try to figure out how do we, as individuals, make a difference and better our society. Pepperdine is a place that is obviously dear to me. It is a place where an institution that played a critical role in my development. It's a place that formed me intellectually, ethically, and morally. It's not something that I think I appreciated or understood at the time. I was just wanting to graduate. You know, I'll be honest with you, get out and get a job. But it's, as time goes on, you realize and you start looking back at your experiences. And this is what I did in some of those challenging moments, that I realized the strength that I was drawing from, the intellect, the knowledge that I was drawing from, came from what I learned here. It also came from the people that I met at this institution, the faculty, the students, the administration. And then you realize that when it all at some point comes together and you're doing something that you were meant to do and supposed to do, and it's part of a path that one travels. So I want to take this opportunity to thank Pepperdine University for everything that it's done to help me throughout my career and development. Global justice is an issue that I find very, very interesting, emotional, and I have a strong passion for. These are issues that call us to take action, that call us to duty, and rightfully so. Because when we sit back and we look around the world, we realize that there are issues, there are problems that demand our attention. There are problems that require you to pause and to think about it and say, well, what should be done about this awful, awful situation? One only needs to look at our recent history to really understand and appreciate. I mean, we can go back, we can talk about World War II, we all know about that. We can talk about Cambodia, where 1.7 million people were killed. And just now, we're starting to pursue justice. We can talk about Bosnia, 250,000 people are killed because of their ethnicity. Rwanda, 1 million people died in 100 days because they were Tutsi. We can talk about Sudan. I'm not talking about Darfur. We'll talk about that. But Sudan, the North-South conflict, where 2 million people were killed because they were African, they were Christian. We can talk about other parts of the world. We can talk about the Congo, where another 2 million people have died and are still dying today because of war crimes, crimes against humanity, human rights abuses. We can talk about all of those things. And we can talk about other parts of the world where governments are completely disregarding the law, disregarding human rights, and have a complete disrespect for human life. We can talk about them, and we should talk about them. But then when we have those discussions, the question becomes, well, what are we going to do about it? What can we do about it? Now, we know there are various tools out there where you have the United Nations, you have governments that can get out there and exercise their military might and begin to bring a problem under control. But those type of solutions are not lasting solutions. They're temporary. They may end the fighting. They may draw people to their neutral corners. It may protect and save lives, which is important. But if we really want to make a difference, we need to begin to look at lasting solutions that will have an impact on the day-to-day lives of individuals, current and future. And that is where the rule of law comes in. The rule of law is critical to any country, any democracy. It is not something that I appreciated before I started this work, that maybe you may not appreciate where you sit today. But the moment you walk into a society and you see the absence of the rule of law, do you finally begin to understand its strength? You look at the absence where people just have no course of redress. There's no court they can walk into. Or if there is a court they can walk into, it's a sham. They have no rights. They have no human rights. They have no right to associate, no right of freedom of speech, no right to travel, no medicine, no education. The list goes on and on. When you begin to see that, then you understand that what we have here in the United States, and of course in other parts of the world, is a respect for something that is the fundamental pillar of democracy, and that is the rule of law. The example I use quite often when I speak on these issues is I do go back to our elections in 2000, and people say, well, Pierre, what are you talking about? What does that have to do with the rule of law? But if you think about it, it's a situation where the most powerful office on this planet changed hands as a result of a court decision. And no one was jailed, no one was beaten, and no one was killed after the decision came down.
That's true.
No one. It shows that the rule of law, when it is respected, it has that strength to bind a society to move forward, to grant and guarantee the basic and fundamental rights to all individuals. It becomes a barrier, a protective security web for us all, because we all in this room know that if something goes wrong, somewhere along the way, we will get that protection. We will get that support from the law. Justice may be slow, but we know that we'll be able to go and be heard and have our matter adjudicated, and addressed. We know that. So that is what we need to be doing as we go out throughout the world. We need to essentially be disciples or missionaries, if you will, on behalf of the rule of law. Now, I'm not saying that we go and we say, this is how you do it. In the United States, this is what we do. Because there are different ways to deal with the details. But it's the broad principles that need to be adhered to and respected. Just the fundamental rights, the right to breathe, the right to walk down the street without being assaulted, raped, or abused. The right to know that if there is a problem, my government will respond or will be held accountable. That is the rule of law. When I was the U.S. ambassador at large for dealing with the war crimes issues, that was effectively my job. And that was to travel around the world and to press governments to do what is right in these type of situations. To press the governments to begin the efforts of planting the seeds for the rule of law. Now, when we looked at this, obviously we looked at it from the perspective of this is the right thing to do, or the human rights element. But we also looked at it from the security element. Because again, the stronger the rule of law is in these societies, the less likelihood you will have of having a conflict erupt. Because there are checks and balances and mechanisms along the way that will prevent from that internal conflict from erupting and then causing the loss of innocence because of who you are, how you were born, what you look like, or whatever the issue may be. One thing that I found in those experiences is that many of these societies, they like the idea, but it was so overwhelming that they didn't know where to start. How do you begin to build the rule of law? Is it something that can happen top down? That's a pretty important question. Or is it something that is bottom up? Is it the people? How do you get there? And I'll be honest with you, I don't have the exact answer. But what it is you have to start putting into these systems, implementing in these societies, just basic mechanisms that allow people to have that redress and begin to build trust in the law. Because what I found is after a while, when you get people to respect the court and bring the matters before a court, while politically the government may not want this to happen, but they're doing it so it looks good internationally, after a while, it takes on a life of its own. And you begin to see the system build, the civil society become more active and be more demanding of their rights, their human rights, their basic fundamental rights. And then once they become more demanding and want to use the court's rule of law as a vehicle, then the governments begin to become accountable. Because before, the people would just sit back quietly and let the government dictate to them and say, this is what we think is best for you, you just take it, deal with it, it is what it is. But we need to light that spark where people know, my voice will be heard, my voice will be respected. I have rights that need to be addressed. I went to Rwanda back in 1994, 95, briefly, and then 96 for several years. As was mentioned, I was here in LA, first a deputy district attorney, then an assistant United States attorney. You know, I had a good thing going on. You know, I really did. They were great jobs. I was living down, by the beach. I knew my job. I knew how to do my job. Tried a lot of cases. But I was not prepared for what I saw when I first went to Rwanda. Now, I know some of your students here were in Rwanda this summer, and I happened to be there myself, and I can tell you it didn't look like that in 94, 95. Yeah, imagine stepping off a plane in a country that once had a population of 8 million people. It lost in 100 days, do the math, 100 days, 1 million people died in 100 days. The majority of those that perished within the first 60 days. Imagine that. Imagine walking into this country that then lost approximately 2 million people because they fled the country to the neighboring, then called Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So automatically you lose over 3 million people. And of these 3 million people, you're dealing with political leaders, gone. You're dealing with professors, the intellectuals, killed because they form the opposition. They're the people who could stand up to the genocide and say, no, this is wrong. Or they could step in and fill in the void for the political leadership that was just killed. Of those, you lose the men, the boys, the fighting age people, the physical strength of the community. And then you begin to lose the women, the children, the elderly that are killed. And of the women that are survived, the majority of them were raped, sexually violated in the most horrific manner imaginable. Imagine that society. Imagine walking into that situation and having to deal literally with the stench of death. Now, you ask yourself, where is the rule of law? Where was the rule of law? How do we bring back the rule of law? What do we do in this situation to make a difference? It was overwhelming. It was so overwhelming that you could do nothing but act. Just do something. Really, just do something. Start taking notes. Start talking to someone. Start collecting evidence. Start figuring it out. Develop a game plan. Now, what we need to keep in mind is what we were talking about here is a situation where this had never been done before. It's the first time the international community came together as a whole to deal with genocide. Now, World War II was the four Allied powers, the victors, that put together military courts and tried the leadership of Nazi Germany. But here, for the first time, people from the US, China, Bangladesh, Belgium, the list goes on, Canada, all over Africa, were coming together with the mandate and the responsibility of saying, we are going to bring back the rule of law. We are going to bring justice to a people that have so dramatically suffered. How do you do that? More importantly, how do you get the people that were affected to trust that, okay, this time we mean it. We will bring the rule of law. We will bring justice. How do you do that? Those were some of the challenges that we were facing at that time. So we began to build a process. We began to put all our heads together and pull the best practices from the United States, from China, from Australia, from the UK, Bangladesh, India, Madagascar, Ethiopia, Senegal, South Africa, the list goes on. I remember one meeting that I had where we were drafting an indictment. And in the room, there were 15 of us. Out of the 15, we had 11 different jurisdictions, countries, legal traditions represented. Now, you can imagine that that was not a productive meeting. We debated the letterhead. I'm serious. Who should sign this document? How do we serve this document, the indictment, on the attorney for the accused that's in Cameroon or in Belgium? Just basic things that we take here for granted, that we just give to a courier and don't worry about it. We had to think through those type of issues. And then when we got to the courtroom to try the case, the issues were magnified. Because before we were just dealing with procedures, and we drafted the rules of procedures and evidence as we went along. So we could figure it out. We said, okay, here's how, we're going to collect evidence, and here's the rule for collecting evidence. We figured it out. Well, then when we got into the courtroom, you had a clash of common law, our approach, and civil law. Civil law is a system, as you may know, where it's really driven by the judges. Our system is driven by the lawyers. The civil law, the magistrate investigating judge prepares the file, sends it up to the trial chamber, they review the file, the attorneys review the file, and of course I'm simplifying this, and then everybody argues about the file. I mean, that's the basic system, as opposed to ours. So when we came in, I remember the very first day, it was a situation where, they said, okay, Mr. Prosecutor, it's, you have the floor. And I'm sitting there going, well, here goes nothing, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm just going to do what I know how to do. And that is my approach. And I began to present my witnesses. And throughout the process, the system evolved. And we learned. We meshed the civil law and the common law, but it was not without its moments, its frustrations. Yeah. One time, I had a witness on the stand. Did the direct examination, and then the defense attorney got up and began his cross-examination. He came from the civil system, so it was not as, let's say, nuanced in his cross-examination. And in fact, it was very abusive, very disrespectful, and was causing problems for my witness. So being, an LA trial attorney, I did what I knew how to do best, is I got up to protect my witness. I objected. And I said, no, this is not right. Now, I'm pleading the case to a trial chamber of 3 judges. The chief judge is from Senegal. He was he's passed away, so I'm using the past tense. Literally 7 foot tall. Very, very dark black skin, almost, purple, very, very dark. Gray hair, wise man, very wise man. The other judge was a woman, an Indian woman from South Africa, a South African Indian descent. And the third was a judge from Sweden, white judge from Sweden. That's my trial bench, okay? So, and they all had their personalities, I get up, I go, objection. The president, Senegalese, President Kama, kind of leans back in his chair. I'll never forget this. And he puts his finger to his chin. I remember it because his finger was about that long. And I just noticed it. And he leans back, looks up, and then looks to the South African and says, objection. What is this objection? Do you have this in your system? And she says, no. He goes to the Swede, and you? And he says, no. He's like, Mr. Prosecutor, waving that finger, there will be no objections, sit down. I'm like, geez. So the defense attorney, you see a little, smile. And he goes right back at it. And my poor witness, this woman has just been violated in so many ways. He just starts attacking her. So I'm like, you know what? I'm getting up again. This is what I did in Compton. This is what I did downtown. I'm from LA, folks. I get up. And then the judge again goes, Mr. Prosecutor, sit down. It goes on, and I start to get up one more time, and he just pointed that finger at me, and I'm like, all right, you know. So I sat down. So I wasn't allowed to object, which was very, very difficult in these situations. The trial goes on, and the defense begins its case. And I'll never forget, in this situation where they have their witness on, he does a direct examination. I get up with my cross-examination. I'm like, look, there are no rules here, so I'm going after this guy. Lo and behold, the defense attorney stands up in the middle of my questioning, cross-examination. And the judge looks at him and says, okay, I forget his name, Mr. Changai, I think was his name. You have the floor. And the guy, and he's francophone, so it's all in French, but so it's very eloquent. He says, your august bench judges, and blah, 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 I have an observation to make. And the judge said, okay, look, give your observation. And basically he gives an objection. And then the judge is like, that's a good observation. Mr. Prosecutor, there'll be no more of that. So what I learned is you can't do objections, but you can make observations. But it shows you how the systems are different. But what I also learned in the process is, besides some of these interesting issues, is the rule of law. And the rule of law, at the end of the day, it's not about the judges. It's not about the lawyers, the registry, the court clerk, and so on. It's about the people, as I was saying a few moments ago. Now let me give you a story that really explains this. And then you'll have an appreciation. And I don't know if in your class you look at some of the work that we did in the Rwanda Tribunal, the Akayezu case, but this will, if you do, this will make sense. We started the case with straight genocide charges. We also had crimes against humanity and war crimes. Again, this hadn't been done before, so we're figuring it out on the fly. We kept getting evidence of sexual violence, rape. We knew it was happening, but we just did not know how to piece it together to bring it up to the accused. We just didn't have it. So finally I sent a team out to do more investigations. And I learned in those additional investigations, we stumbled upon one woman who told us a story that, well, you know what happened was the women were seeking shelter at what's effectively a city hall. And then when they were there, the militia would come back at night and just rape them throughout the evening and ultimately kill them. So the reason you're not finding your evidence is because most of the witnesses were killed. But this woman said, I know where there are about 5 women, though, who don't want to talk about this, but that were part of this that survived. So we went out, began to find those witnesses, and began through an 8-month process building relationships. I began to meet with the women regularly. I never talked about what happened. We just slowly established a relationship and then inched toward the events that dramatically impacted their lives. We knew what we were talking about, but we talked around it. Finally, I get the witnesses on a plane. We bring them from Rwanda to Arusha, Tanzania, where we set up the courthouse. The first of the 6 women I would put on the stand, we called her witness JJ. We gave them pseudonyms. She was the oldest of the group. She had been violated in ways that I just can't even repeat here. You know, it's not appropriate. But if you let your imagination run wild, take it to the next level. So we're getting ready for her testimony. We went through it in a little more detail, and I finally told her, I said, look, tomorrow I'm going to have to ask you some real probing questions. It's going to be uncomfortable. particularly when you're dealing with a society where it's taboo to talk about these issues. And she starts to waver on me and says, I don't think I can do this. I can't do this. I just can't do it. And I'm sitting there, you can imagine what's going through my mind. Whoa, wait a minute, this is huge. We need you, it's important, the case. The world's out there, we've got CNN, BBC, everyone. So I start talking with her, and I said, what's wrong? And she says, I can't talk about it. It's just too difficult, it's too embarrassing, it's taboo. And then I don't know why this happened, but I said, JJ, let me tell you something. This is important. I mean, you know what happened to women in Rwanda, but let me tell you about what's happened in other parts of the world. So I began to tell her about the rape camps in Bosnia. I began to tell her about how in World War II, women were raped and it wasn't even prosecuted. It was just a spoil of war. We talked about other parts of the world where all these atrocities were happening. And I said, JJ, this has always been ignored. So tomorrow you have the opportunity to speak for all those women that did not have an opportunity to speak for themselves in the past, the people who are out there presently who wish they had a forum. You have an opportunity to make the difference, to once and for all let the world know that this is wrong, this is illegal, and it needs to be on equal footing with all other war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, human rights abuses. She found her strength and decided, yes, I will do this. She went into the courtroom timid. It was like pulling teeth getting her to talk about it, but we drew it out. She was on the stand for almost 8 hours. So as we're drawing it out, she's getting stronger and stronger. And she begins to point that finger of accusation to my accused. And she starts saying, this is what you did. You gave the orders. You gave the command. So that by the end of her testimony, she was sitting upright, her voice was loud, and she was saying, this is wrong. She walked out of there with a bounce to her step. It was cathartic. She walked out of there knowing that she not only made a difference in her life, but for the millions of people, women out there who've been abused. She knew she made a difference, so much so that when she came back, she was telling all the other women what happened, and they were just riveted listening to her, that after, they were all raising their hands saying, I want to go next, I want to go next, it's my turn. She energized that group. She made legal international history. A farmer from Rwanda made the difference. She was and is the rule of law. And that is what it's about, is we need to give the people that strength, that courage, that energy to get out there, to know that a system is there for them to fight against what is wrong. Now, we could go on, there's many stories I could tell that give meaning to this point. I think you get what we're talking about. And we as lawyers have the opportunity to be the instrument for these people. And that is our job. We're the instrument. We're going to bring them through. That is what I was able to do in Rwanda. Now, as I begin to conclude, I'm going to quickly tell you how I got involved. I had no idea what was happening in Rwanda in 1994. I happened to go to a meeting in the U.S. Attorney's Office where someone came and talked about Rwanda and said 1 million people died in 100 days. He had just come back from a fact-finding mission as part of the UN. This is mid-fall '94. And he told a story that stays with me to this day. And I remember at the end of it just being shocked and surprised. I was shocked because I had no idea that 1 million people died in 100 days and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know. I was surprised because he was a lawyer, and I said, wow, you can actually go and do that? Go do a fact-finding mission, use your skills, your talents, write a report, take it to the UN Security Council, and try to better a situation? So I approached him. I'm going to give you the short version. We have dinner, he tells me more, he encourages me to put my name in the ring because the UN just established a tribunal for Rwanda. I was reluctant, but I said yes. I said, let's put it in, create the option. Months later, I get a call from the State Department. They asked me to do a quick assessment mission in Rwanda, which I said, well, I can do that for a few weeks. I came back. Then I was asked, I got a call from the Attorney General's office, Janet Reno's office, saying, we read your report from Rwanda. We really want you to be the lead U.S. prosecutor assigned to the tribunal for Rwanda. And I didn't say yes. I said, I need time to think about this. And I realized at the time I was struggling with the decision because I was being asked to leave my comfort zone. I was being asked to leave. I had a place on the beach, brand new car, great girlfriend at the time. I mean, life was good. I mean, what else do I need, And then to go to Rwanda, where there's no electricity, no water, that you smell decaying bodies when you're walking down the street. Why do I want to do that? And then I realized that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a difference. Before then, I always thought, well, the people who deal with these problems, it's the United Nations, it's governments, it's regional organizations, NATO. I'm just a citizen of this world. But then I realized that, you know what? A year in a lifetime, at that time, that was a commitment, is nothing. I should go and at least try to be part of the process. In a humble manner, do whatever I can to help remedy this situation. I went. A year turned into 3 years. My humble commitment turned into making legal history. And then I realized that, the people who make a difference are people. It's not governments. It's not the United Nations. It's not regional organizations. It's the individual. The individual can make a global difference if you find the courage to try. You find the strength to leave your comfort zone, to say, I'm going to do something different. My family thinks I'm crazy, which mine did, I tell you, at the time. But I'm going to go out and try to make a difference. And I'm living proof that the individual can make a difference just by taking that chance. So what I encourage you to do as you begin to plot the course for your future, wherever you're going to go, whatever path you take, you don't need to go to Rwanda, but there's something that you can do, even if it's speaking out, because no one spoke out in 1994 when 1 million people were being killed. Maybe it's writing letters. Maybe it is going to a place like Rwanda. Whether you're in business, law, or just at home, there is something that you can do to make a difference. So what I encourage you to do is begin just by paying attention. Begin by doing what you're doing here. Coming here and listening and becoming aware. Because then the ideas will emerge. So when you're looking at flipping through either newspaper or on the internet, instead of looking at a situation like a Rwanda or Darfur or elsewhere and say, boy, that's terrible, and then clicking to the entertainment page or sports, pause and say, what can be done? What should be done? What can I do to make a difference? Because if you're serious, you'll figure something out. You'll find a way to be heard And if you're found a way to be heard or you begin to pay attention, then who knows what opportunities may come up. Maybe you too will be asked to go and play a critical role in something. Maybe you too will be able to go and make a fundamental difference, not only from a legal perspective, but in the lives of millions of people who have survived such imaginable atrocities that they're just hoping, that you pause and pay attention and raise your voice rather than going to the entertainment page. They are hoping that you decide to leave your comfort zone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you, and I know we'll do questions and answers.